the concluding meeting of my year, although I will introduce the next one. But then it's out to pasture for me. So thank you for coming to our 14th Zoom meeting of 2020. And to start us off today, I'm going to turn the mic over to Linda Davidson, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test.
Here we have it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now if you'll follow along the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build
goodwill and better
and
friendships?
And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Linda. So it seems like Zoom should still be new, but after 14 meetings, it's not as new anymore. So let me give you a little, you could put up that slide, Fred. I'll give you a little preview of today's meeting. There we go. Today's presenter is Michael Dougherty, and then we're going to have a word from our brewmasters, Daryl and Sally Brown. Then Bill Anderson will give us an update on COVID-19. And then we have a birthday honor for Peter Ewing. Today is his birthday, and he is exercising his right to speak on his birthday. And then after Peter speaks, I will close and adjourn the meeting. So I'm going to introduce Michael Dougherty now. He has been our Boulder District Attorney and a member of our club since 2018. He was sponsored by Stan Garnett. If you've been paying attention to the Boulder District Attorney's Office since Michael was elected, you have witnessed a greater emphasis on the policy of rehabilitation in Boulder County's justice system. However, recent events have had a profound impact on the criminal justice system, both in Boulder and across the United States. COVID-19 has caused issues for community health and safety for all people in our courts, as well as a significant backlog of cases and trials. There have been deeply felt expressions of anguish and outrage throughout the nation since the murder of George Floyd and other Black people. What do these times of crisis reflect about the current state of our justice system, and where are we going to go from here? We will find a path forward, and Michael Dougherty is here today to help guide us. Please give a warm Boulder Rotary Club welcome to District Attorney Michael Dougherty. Michael.
Thank you. And John, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I am so honored and excited to be with all of you today. It is great to see you, even over Zoom video once again. I'd much rather that we were in person, but I really appreciate the Rotary Club continuing to bring us together. And I really am honored to be asked to give this presentation today and to talk to you about what we could do to learn from the challenges we're going through in this country right now, including here in Boulder County and Colorado, to improve the justice system and to make sure it works fairly and equally for everyone, and that people can trust law enforcement and the justice system. So I'm going to talk about the challenges we've been facing over the past several months as a nation and its impact here in Boulder County and specifically on our justice system. But I really want to start by saying I hope all of you are doing well. I recognize we're going through a really challenging time, both in terms of health and safety, but also as we look at ourselves as a country and go through this difficult process of the changes we need to make, the changes we need to own, and the progress that we have to make together. I recognize it's a difficult time for all of us. So that's been true here at the district attorney's office too, and in the court system. But I am so hopeful and excited for the road ahead. And I'll share with you one of the great things I love about being a Rotarian is that when I see the four-way test and when I see all of you, I'm reminded that so much of what the Rotary Club believes in and stands for is what drives the justice system as well. So that four-way test always speaks to me about what we're doing here in the justice system, and I want to emphasize that right at the start, because as we go through this discussion, I'm going to be hitting on some of those same concepts. I was at CU this morning talking with a group of students, mostly people of color, about their concerns about policing and the justice system and racism in the United States and how it impacts the justice system. And it was such an important and fascinating discussion, including things where they were saying we should eliminate all the police in the United States. We should have all police officers be unarmed while they're on patrol. We should change how we do things. And it's those kinds of conversations that I think will help us form and shape the justice system going forward, and making sure that we do our very best to enhance community safety while improving the justice system and maintaining the trust of the community. And that's something I'm going to return through this PowerPoint. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint now. Tell me if you can see it. You should see the PowerPoint on the screen now, and I trust that John would let me know if he didn't see it. So just a couple of quick facts about the District Attorney's Office. As you may recall, we have jurisdiction over all criminal offenses committed here in Boulder County. We actually have 8 law enforcement agencies in Boulder County, including the Sheriff's Office, Boulder Police Department, CU has its own police department, and there are 8 police agencies total. And then the District Attorney's Office is in charge of investigating and prosecuting any criminal offenses committed anywhere within what's called the 20th Judicial District. We actually have 22 judicial districts here in Colorado. There are 22 independently elected district attorneys, and we have jurisdiction over different parts of the state. Here at the Boulder District Attorney's Office, we have 90 outstanding public servants who really work tirelessly, and I'm so grateful to them because they're just absolutely fantastic. And that predates me, and it's thanks to our friend Stan Garnett that he built it into such a strong office before I even arrived. We have roughly 11,000 cases per year, 1,000 of which are violent felonies. And we have misdemeanors and traffic cases as well. We have 2 offices, one here in downtown Boulder, the Justice Center, and then another one up in Longmont. At the Longmont Courthouse, we prosecute any traffic cases or misdemeanor cases committed in the city of Longmont. Any felonies are transferred down here to the Justice Center in Boulder. So, as John said during that introduction, we've been through some incredibly difficult challenges as a country. And it's my hope and my commitment to you that we're going to take lessons from these experiences and reflect upon and act upon how we can improve the justice system in light of what we've gone through with COVID-19, and also the deeply felt expressions of anguish, anger, and demands for reform since the murder of George Floyd and others. So our country has been through an incredibly difficult time, but I do think, as an optimist, that the silver lining here is that we have lessons to learn and progress to be made, and these things should push us, and certainly will push us at the District Attorney's Office, to grow from these experiences, to learn from them, and to figure out how to make more progress and how to make things work better, and, as I say, to find a path forward. So I'm going to talk first about the impact of COVID-19 on the justice system. And I will share with you from my perspective, it's been an incredibly fascinating couple of months, in that just a couple months ago, the biggest complaint I had from the community, the thing that I was emailed about and called about most often, was the lack of police enforcement of the public health orders. So people were demanding that the Boulder PD cite and arrest, and that the district attorney prosecute more people for being in Eben G. Fine Park without distancing, or being out on the trails and not wearing masks. But all of the law enforcement agencies in Boulder County and the district attorney's office had agreed that criminal enforcement of the public health orders would only be used as a last resort. But it wasn't so long ago that the demand was, we need more policing, more police enforcement, and more prosecution, specifically in regards to COVID-19. And now, in light of recent events, we realize that we have more work to do, and there are deeper issues to be addressed. But I do want to share that with you because I think it highlights some of what we talk about towards the end of this presentation about how does the justice system best designed? Who is it supposed to serve? And what can we do to improve the justice system? So we identified these priorities in response to COVID-19, maintaining community safety, protecting victims, also reducing the need for individuals to come to the courthouse. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we took very proactive steps here in Boulder County to reduce the need for members of the public to come to the courthouse. We have remained open since the beginning of the pandemic. We had staff here, including me, every day. And we've been working hard to do everything we can to protect victims, maintain community safety, and also honor the rights of the accused so that their cases could move forward. And also, part of what we did in response to COVID-19 was take fairly dramatic, proactive steps to reduce the jail population. And I'll talk with you about that as well. So community safety, one area that we addressed was domestic violence and abuse, because domestic violence flourishes in situations where someone's isolated from the rest of the community. In addition to domestic violence, I would point to elder abuse. Over 70% of elder abuse cases are committed by someone in the older person's family or immediate circle, including their caregivers. So when you think about that data point and think about the fact that during COVID-19, all of us were required to isolate to some extent, thereby for victims, cutting them off from their normal sources of assistance. So friends, neighbors, if they would go to a school, for example, or go to a hair salon, someone might notice that they had been victimized and would call for help. Everyone was being forced to isolate. We had a lot of concern around domestic violence and elder abuse, as well as child abuse. So we did a lot to reach out to the community, to let the community know law enforcement, treatment providers, and the district attorney's office remained available to serve them and to help them during this time. And I just wanted to share with you this flyer. It's one of several that we sent out during COVID-19, because as evidenced by the fact that I'm appearing virtually today, it's necessary for us to get the word out virtually and via email and community bulletins, because we're out in the community a lot less than we normally are. We put a premium on community outreach, and that certainly has been changed based on COVID-19. This is another slide that demonstrates the community outreach efforts around domestic violence. We partnered with the Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence and the Safe Shelter of St. Vrain Valley to get the word out about resources that are available for victims of abuse. One thing that happened during COVID-19 and continues to remain a focus of my office is helping make sure that people are not victimized by frauds or scammers. Unfortunately, whenever there's a crisis, whether it be after a hurricane, after 9/11, or at the start of this pandemic, there's a very small number of people who try to prey upon the worry, anxiety, and desperation that some may feel. And we've received a number of complaints from the community, and also this is true around Colorado, around stimulus check scams, or scams where people were offering tests that they could be sent through the mail to test for COVID-19, contact tracing scams where people get text messages saying, click on this link, you've been exposed to someone with the coronavirus, and you click on the link and it's actually a virus or a mining thing that they're going to put into your phone. So we've been trying to get the word out, including what you see here on the screen there, about stimulus check scams, and helping the community understand what the government would require, if anything, to issue stimulus checks. So we've been working on this in an effort to try to make sure that we're protecting the community and doing everything we can. So I see a number of questions coming up, and these are great questions. I'm going to stop and address two just really quickly. So Ruth Irwin asked, how has the new mental health facility at BCH made any impact in reducing the population in the jail with mental health issues? Ruth, that's a great question. We have a mental health diversion program. It's actually the only one in the state. It's here in Boulder County. Our office was awarded the funding by the state as a pilot program, where we have individuals who, when they're first arrested, are screened for mental health disorders. And if it's a low-level offense, we divert them out of the system before they're even charged with a criminal offense and connect them with treatment in the community. Similarly, Sheriff Joe Pelly has put a number of different mental health programs in place, working closely with BCH to make sure that we're doing everything we can to better serve those who have mental health issues that result in them ending up in the criminal justice system. I will say that I strongly believe and will continue to advocate for more mental health treatment being available in the community. We've set up these systems in the criminal justice system, and that's a very positive thing. But someone shouldn't have to hit the doors of the courthouse or the jail to get treatment for mental health issues or substance abuse issues. So we're going to continue working on making sure we have more community treatment available. There's a question from John Sullivan. John says he understands the literal meaning of defund the police. I understand how some other people and pundits have interpreted the phrase. How do you interpret this phrase as Boulder District Attorney? John, thank you for that question. To me, I think that's an important question to ask, and I think that's something every police agency and district attorney's office has to look at. Are there things we could be doing to change our funding mechanisms that would better address the underlying problems, behavioral health issues often, that drive people to the criminal justice system? I will say, as an example, that the new chief for the Boulder Police Department, Maris Herold, has already asked the city of Boulder to change her funding for mental health treatment that she has coming into the police department and move it to Health and Human Services, so that it's more out in the community and being used before people even encounter the police. I think that's a really positive step to look at in terms of where the funding is going. I will say, however, just to answer that question very directly, Colorado needs to make more of a commitment and an investment to helping people with mental health issues and substance abuse issues. It's not going to be accomplished by taking away 2 or 3 full-time jobs from the Boulder Police Department. We rank in the bottom 15 as a state in mental health treatment in the community and substance abuse treatment in the community. That, in my mind, is not going to be answered by simply saying defund the police. We need to make more of a community investment as a state in making sure that we're helping people who have behavioral health issues who tend to cycle in and out of the jail over and over again. We've taken a lot of positive steps here in Boulder County, but we need to see these things done statewide. And then Gordon's asking a question about offenders at the jail and protecting them from the coronavirus. And Gordon, I'm happy to share with you that in a couple slides, I'm going to be addressing that question as well. So here are some steps we took to help the public not become infected or from the coronavirus or by the coronavirus and not spread it to others. So of course we had to keep things going here at the courthouse, but thankfully we have strong working relationships between my office, the defense bar, and law enforcement, as well as the courts, to put protections in place to make sure that we're limiting how many people have to come to the courthouse. We quickly moved to video appearances, thereby limiting how many people have to be in the courthouse at any time. And this is one of those efficiencies that I plan to take forward with us after this pandemic has passed. We have more people coming to the courthouse than we need to in the year 2020, and commuting, childcare, missing work, you name it, we can reduce the impact on their lives and the impact that the court system has on their lives by making it more efficient. The move to video appearances was incredibly successful here. And that may seem obvious since we're now all appearing on Zoom. When we first started this at the start of COVID-19, there was some skepticism that we'd be able to pull this off. We now have entire, what are called dockets, an entire day of cases taken care of via video. So we're doing that on misdemeanor and felony cases. We have staff appearing, if they want, from here in the office at their desk, but some are doing it from home. They're still working remotely, and being able to appear in court along with the defendant who's appearing remotely and the defense attorney who's appearing remotely, thereby reducing the likelihood of anybody becoming infected with the virus. And that's been an incredibly important step, and I appreciate the Chief Judge of Boulder, Ingrid Bakke, because she helped us put these things in place, and we're going to continue to maintain them for the foreseeable future. So to the question about the jail, the virus in the jail would be an incredibly serious risk for offenders, jail staff, medical staff, and the community. And one thing I want to stress is the Boulder County Jail, like other jails around the country, are only for individuals who are going to be there for a short amount of time. If someone is serving a long sentence, that's in a state prison facility run by the Department of Corrections. So when we're talking about the jail population, if you were standing outside the doors of the jail, you would see people exiting and entering every day, literally. So it's not only the offenders, but also the jail staff and medical staff were there, the attorneys were there, and also the community members, because these people are coming back into our community after a fairly short period of time, which is why, as John said, we've put so much effort into improving our efforts around rehabilitation to help them make a successful return to the community. With regards to COVID-19, we wanted to limit the likelihood that the virus would hit the jail because it would spread like wildfire if it did. So we took a number of steps. You see the ones there on the screen. We went through each and every individual case. And I greatly appreciate the work of the staff here at the district attorney's office. They were fantastic. I mean, in the first week or so after COVID-19 was starting to hit Colorado, they went through each and every case. They worked overtime to make sure that we could release anybody who did not present a significant risk to the community. At the start of COVID-19, we had 450 offenders in the jail. As of last week, we had 200. So we've reduced the jail population by over 50% here in Boulder County. And the ones who remain in the jail, the ones that we believe for a variety of factors present a risk to the community. The others have been released back into the community. And this is something I want to take forward with us, to look at the data around those releases, their conduct post-release, and how we can maintain a lower jail population overall. And that's something I'm committed to doing without jeopardizing public safety, of course. So part of the key there is making sure that they had support and monitoring when they were released. So there's a group here at the courthouse, a department called Community Justice Services. They provide pretrial services, so helping individuals with drug testing, monitoring, counseling while their case is pending. Probation, the state probation department also participated. And then we also have two nonprofits in Boulder County. One is called the Reentry Initiative, operates out of Longmont, and then Focus Reentry here in downtown Boulder. And they provide services to formerly incarcerated individuals to ensure they make a successful return to the community. And you've heard me say before, the last time I had the honor of presenting to the Rotary Club, that is the area for greatest improvement in our justice system, improving the rehabilitation of offenders. We have too many people who end up right back in the jail and right back in the state prison system. And that's a failure for the offender, future victims, the taxpayers, and community safety. Colorado ranks in the bottom 10 in the nation. We're 41st out of 50 in offenders returning to state prison within 3 years of their release. So if we just were at the nationwide average, which is 32% instead of 50%, think of how many cases we prevent from ever happening. So I'm excited that we have a Department of Corrections director who just came on board when Governor Polis took office. He's very committed to improving the conditions, as he says, behind the walls and raising the rate of successful rehabilitation here in Colorado. I will say, as I start to talk about how important it is to have the trust of the community when it comes to criminal justice reform, that this is a good example of when you need the community's trust and support. So if I asked you, how many of you agree that we should reduce the jail population in response to COVID-19? I imagine most of you would raise your hands. But if one of those offenders is released and goes on to commit a horrific crime, you can imagine the community response. And in fact, that happened at the state level. Governor Polis took steps, along with the Director of Corrections, to reduce the population at the state prison facilities. And one of those individuals is now charged with murder that he committed down in Denver, allegedly. So point being, there was immediate pushback on that. So criminal justice reform has to be a lasting effort, and change only happens through alliances and community support. I think that's a really important point. I think it was Gordon had a question about protecting the jail population that's there from the coronavirus. I can share with you that by reducing the jail population, we afforded the jail the opportunity, and Sheriff Pelley was a great ally in this effort. And as a result, his staff has been able to engage in social distancing between offenders that would not have been physically possible when they were operating at their usual capacity. So those steps were in place. And they have other steps they've taken to quarantine any offenders who are being brought into the jail. They do regular testing when there's ever a concern at the jail. And they've taken a lot of steps to minimize and thankfully eliminate at this point the likelihood that offenders are going to come down with the coronavirus. So I talked a little bit about community trust. And as I start to talk about the impact and reactions to the murder of George Floyd and other injustices, one thing I would share with you is that this has been an area of focus and passion for us at the District Attorney's Office and for me for a long time. You may think the justice system works perfectly, and you may think police officers need not change at all. But I would encourage you to examine whether the community trusts in law enforcement and trust the justice system. Because we can only protect the community and ensure public safety if that trust exists. So even for those in law enforcement who don't believe we need to make any changes, this is a focus that I always bring to the discussion. That if we don't have the trust of the community, they're not calling 911. They're not sticking around to serve as witnesses. They're not willing to provide their information to the police or come to the courthouse. And if they show up as jurors at the courthouse, they're less likely to believe law enforcement and the deputy district attorney or district attorney who appears in front of them. So maintaining and enhancing that trust has been a focus of ours, and it's part of the reason we do so much community outreach, such as that meeting I had this morning with the CU students. And it's an area of focus for us. It was also an area of focus for the legislature, and it's a part of why they, sorry, I'm just looking at a question. Part of why they moved on Senate Bill 217. And there's a question from Marcia regarding restorative justice and restorative justice between police officers and individuals in the community, and I'll touch on both of those things. And Gordon asked, before I move on, I'll answer Gordon's question. What is the portion of prisoners that have mental health issues and how are they attended? And Gordon, that's a great question. So Sheriff Pelly would tell you that roughly 40 to 50% of the jail population have significant mental health issues on any given day at the jail. So 40 to 50%. So that highlights the need, as I talked about earlier, for us to have more mental health treatment available in the community, because these people end up in the criminal justice system and a jail cell is the last place they should be. That's why we started that mental health diversion program, which we'll be talking a little bit more about. And Marcia, I'll be sure to answer your question as we move along too. So I wanted to touch on what the legislature did to try to reform and improve law enforcement as well as the justice system, and to build more trust in the criminal justice system for all members of our community. So Senate Bill 217, much of what was contained in Senate Bill 217 had been considered, and apparently the decision had been made not to introduce it this legislative session, but that all changed after the murder of George Floyd. And the legislative sponsors decided to put a bill together that became Senate Bill 217, which was entitled "To Enhance the Integrity of Law Enforcement." I was honored to support the bill and to testify on behalf of all the district attorneys of Colorado, and I had the privilege of testifying alongside Sheriff Pelly, who testified on behalf of all the sheriffs of Colorado. And there was a tremendous amount of work that went into the bill in a very short period of time. And in some ways, the coronavirus allowed this bill to happen. What I mean by that is the legislature should have been done with their session. They should have been gone for the summer. But because of the coronavirus, the legislature was still in session because they had been delayed and suspended for a period of time. They were during COVID-19, and they were still in session when the murder of George Floyd occurred, and they made this bill their priority. So what does this bill do? It bans the use of chokeholds by law enforcement. I can tell you that here in Boulder County, of the 8 law enforcement agencies, I believe all 8 had already prohibited chokeholds through their policy, their departmental policies. This puts it into law, however, and requires statewide a prohibition on chokeholds. Senate Bill 217 also changed the fleeing felon rule, which, to put it in simple terms, law enforcement in specific situations had the authority to fire upon an individual who's running in the other direction. That happens in a minority of the officer-involved shootings. It happens fairly infrequently. However, these are the types of cases that are most concerning, that people believe demonstrate tragic injustices, and the legislature took steps to eliminate the provisions around fleeing felon and to reduce the instances where law enforcement could discharge their weapons. They also changed use of force in a number of other ways in an effort to de-escalate police conduct and have police engage in more non-violent means with members of the community. Duty to intervene for all police officers. That means that police officers who see another officer exercising or using excessive force must intervene. They must then report it to their supervisor and prepare a written report within 10 days of the incident. If they fail to do so, they would be charged with committing a Class 1 misdemeanor. You probably heard a lot and saw a lot through the media and social media about qualified immunity. That changed significantly through Senate Bill 217. And now if it's found that an officer did not engage in good faith law enforcement or made an unreasonable decision outside the requirements of the law, they could be held civilly liable for up to $25,000 individually, or 5% of any judgment by a civil court, whichever is less. So we have a question here from Bill Anderson. With the death of George Floyd, enhanced attention has fallen on the closeness of relationships between the police and DA's offices. While this might be in some respects a natural consequence of their work together to protect the community, how do you create an environment where prosecutors feel empowered to also hold police accountable for misconduct? Bill, thanks for that question. It's a really important question. I feel very strongly about this issue. We are 100% committed to holding law enforcement accountable, to holding DA staff accountable, because no one is above the law. And having had the duty of prosecuting police officers in the past, and we're currently prosecuting 2 sheriff's deputies as well, we take this very seriously. The trust that the community has in the justice system completely breaks down if people are getting special treatment. We also want to make sure there's never the perception that there's special treatment. So in 2015, I supported a bill in the legislature, which is now law here in Colorado, that anytime there's an officer-involved shooting, the officer's agency cannot participate in the investigation. It has to be a multi-agency investigation, and the findings have to be made publicly available. So the district attorney has to oversee the investigation, review the investigation, and then provide all the findings to the community. But I think that's a really important question that Bill just asked, because no one should be above the law, and no one should perceive that as being the case. So Bill, we talk about this a lot in the office. We train on it. Our prosecutors know that although we have working relationships with law enforcement, we need to make sure that we hold them and hold ourselves equally accountable under the law. So one thing that might be of interest to you that Senate Bill 217 addressed is that now when anyone's stopped either on the street or in a traffic stop, the police have to record the demographic data of that individual and then provide it to their agency. And the agency has to report it to the state. Those reports will then be made publicly available. So let's say a year from now, you're curious about how many people are being stopped in Boulder County and the race, ethnicity, gender, and so on of those individuals. You'll be able to look on a state website. We'll also put it on the DA website and see what those stops consisted of and what the outcomes were. Finally, Senate Bill 217 requires every law enforcement agency in the state of Colorado to have body-worn cameras by 2023. Nearly all of the Boulder County law enforcement agencies already have and use body-worn cameras. This requires it statewide. The implementation date was pushed out to 2023 just because of the financial impact to the local agencies of purchasing body-worn cameras and then also purchasing the data services that are required with them. So what can we do about it here in Boulder County? What can we do to improve the justice system? So we're fully committed to meaningful criminal justice reform. It's been a real focus of ours. It's also been a focus of Boulder County law enforcement. Boulder County law enforcement is among the best in the state. And 2 things that they've been working on that I think would be of interest to you. One is a co-responder model where they have crisis intervention teams going out along with law enforcement to deal with individuals who are in the midst of mental health crisis and to make sure that we have people who are experts in dealing with mental health issues working hand in hand with law enforcement. So another part that we have here in Boulder County is law enforcement assisted diversion, where law enforcement has the resources to divert people before they're even placed under arrest. So in other words, an alternative to an arrest. I'll give you an example. Drug cases, we're about to announce a new drug diversion program here in Boulder County, where individuals who are in possession of low-level amounts of controlled substances could be diverted to mental health partners for treatment evaluation as opposed to being arrested if it's their first encounter with law enforcement. So things like that we've put in place. We're getting some great questions here, some of which I'm going to come to in just a minute. So some other things we've done in Boulder County, we've undergone a major expansion of the DA restorative justice and diversion program. We've expanded by 350%. We have a 92% success rate with our diversion program. That means people who are coming into the diversion program, accepting accountability, giving restitution to the victims if there was property damage, for example, going through counseling or treatment, whatever the needs are. If they complete that program, which we have a 92% success rate, the case is then dismissed. So they don't carry with them the collateral consequences that make it so hard for them to get a job, education, or housing. I touched on the mental health diversion program. We also started the DA Fresh Start warrant forgiveness program, the first and only of its kind in Colorado, where individuals who have an outstanding warrant for failing to appear for court can come down on a Saturday to the courthouse without fear of arrest, clear the warrant, and resolve the case. Because the alternative is they get pulled over for running a stop sign and they're arrested and taken to the jail and held overnight, thereby disrupting their family, work, and so on. We're trying to build more trust with the immigrant communities here in Boulder County, and Stan Garnett had started the Immigrant Protection Program. We've added resources to that, and we're out in the community very often talking to our immigrant communities so that they can trust law enforcement, and we'll reach out to law enforcement when they're victimized. In an effort to prevent more offenses from taking place, so this is on the prevention side, we have a workplace sexual misconduct program, and if you're a business owner, I encourage you to take us up on this. We go out and offer free presentations on the laws around sexual assault and sexual harassment. And we do that in an effort to try to reduce the likelihood of those things happening in the workplace, particularly for those businesses that are small and perhaps don't have a human resources department. So we've gone to a golf course, for example, and talked to all the young employees at the golf club about what the rules of the road are. And also, if they're victimized, what the resources and support we have here in Boulder County for victims of sex assault. Vera Institute of Justice is a nationwide group. They're an independent group that conducts a deep dive data analysis in a district attorney's office to determine whether any racial inequities or disparities exist and how to address them, and other recommendations to improve the justice system. The Vera Institute of Justice chooses 3 DA's offices in the country to work with, and they chose the Boulder County District Attorney's Office in February of this year. I'm really excited about it. It comes at no cost to the people of Boulder County, no cost to the office. That's why the selection process is so important. And I'm really looking forward to that. And then they'll come in, they've already started, to do a deep dive data analysis, and I plan to, and I'm committed to, making those findings available to the public. We also launched the Bias and Hate Crimes Initiative to try to reach out to affected community groups to make sure we're doing everything we can to reduce hate crimes and hate speech from happening here in Boulder County. So from these challenges, we have a real opportunity to reset and reevaluate how we function. I actually think that's true on an individual level. You probably, like me, have gone through, should I start working out more? Should I start working out less? Should I eat better? Those kinds of questions. On an individual level, when you go through this kind of crisis, you examine your own life. This is a time for us to also examine the justice system and to reimagine the justice system, to think about how to make it work so we're best serving the entire community and that our resources are in the right place. So one of the questions that we had was, what resources do we need? I think the first priority for resources in my mind would be more treatment available in the community, just completely separate from the district attorney's office. Just globally speaking, that's what we need. Behavioral health treatment available in the community here in Boulder County and throughout the state. In terms of resources here in the office, there are a number of things we need. I appreciate the county commissioners have been helping us to advance the office and improve the justice system. We certainly need more resources, but that's the top one, behavioral health treatment in the community. What can we do, and this is a question from Chad, in terms of trust in law enforcement, how can local efforts overcome national perceptions? And how are those perceptions intertwined? Should there be national standards? So yes, there should be national standards, and I'm really excited to share with you that it appears Congress is now moving forward with a criminal justice reform bill, thanks to our own Congressman, Joe Neguse, who helped introduce the bill earlier this week, and it appears that that's going to move forward. And I think having national standards is always important because that sets the floor that everyone can then work above. And on Tuesday, June 30th at 11:30, Joe Neguse and I will be having a town hall together talking about criminal justice reform at the federal level and the local level. So I encourage you to tune in Tuesday at 11:30. And in terms of how we develop more trust, Chad, it's about these kinds of conversations. So the conversation at CU, where they have a lot of criticisms and concerns that are valid, but just being able to sit down as myself, the police chief for Boulder, and the police chief for CU Boulder, and just do our best to answer questions and to admit there are things that are need to be improved upon. And then we have to own those responses, and we have to own the failures of the justice system and continue to push ourselves every day to improve, as I say on the slides, like Rotarians do. So making sure that we're doing everything we can to improve the justice system is something we're absolutely committed to. Do we have community police review boards? Gordon, that's a good question. We have community police review boards. We have, I'm going to put my information up here on the screen so you have it as I answer Gordon's question. So the Boulder Police Department, as you may recall, there were a couple of incidents that they had that caused a lot of community concern last year. As a result, as you may remember, there was a oversight task force that was put together. My office participated in that task force. And one of the recommendations of the task force was for the city of Boulder to hire an independent monitor to oversee any allegations of police misconduct. So today, actually right now, as we speak, they're doing a final interview of the top candidate for the independent monitor role here in Boulder. So that's going to be something that'll be in place in the very near future, assuming that interview goes well. And then that'll bring me back to the other question that was asked earlier. And it was a question about having restorative justice for conduct or interactions between members of the community and the police. And I'm really excited too that we've started making steps in that direction. We need to do more. But I'll finish because I know I only have 4 minutes left. I'll finish with this story for you. And I think it's a great example of how the justice system can work better. There's a young woman who has a lot of problems, and her family has dealt with a host of issues over the years, and they do not trust, like, or respect law enforcement, and they live up in Longmont. On this day, a few months ago, the young woman in the family was out, and she got into an altercation, an incident. Police responded, and then she ended up assaulting a female police officer who responded to the scene. She was arrested, and she was charged with assault on a police officer. Now, traditionally, what would happen is she'd be prosecuted, and if the case could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, she would end up with a conviction and have it on her record for the rest of her life. With the permission of the victim, the police officer, we instead put the case through restorative justice. And that involved the police officer and the young woman sitting down together. And the young woman talked about her disdain for the police and her lack of respect for the police and her family's history. And the police officer talked about how she feared for her life during that fight. And she was worried that she wouldn't see her family ever again. And that session was incredibly powerful, went very well by all accounts. The young woman accepted accountability, apologized to the officer ultimately, and with the officer's permission, the case was then dismissed. So think about the difference in her life, the life of the officer who, probably would have been perhaps satisfied with the conviction, but having that conversation with that woman was a different experience. So we've tried that in a number of cases. We can only do it if both the individual and the victim agree to restorative justice. We can't force people through that program. So there have been times, I'll share with you, that we've asked Boulder PD and an individual from the community to sit down, and the individual has refused. Boulder PD has been willing to do it. And I think those are things that we should continue to look at when appropriate to try to build strong relationships and build more trust in law enforcement and the justice system. I'm so honored to be your district attorney. I'm always happy to answer questions, as you know, and I think so highly of this Rotary Club. So a special place in my heart for all you folks. And let me know if I could ever do anything. And I hope you're staying safe and healthy. And I'm confident we're going to come out on the other side of this crisis even better than we were before, but it's going to be a journey to get there. And I'm absolutely committed to it. Thank you.
Michael, this is David Driscoll. Can you hear me?
Yes, David.
Hi. We wanted to thank you so much for your presentation today. I don't know how you do it with the schedule that you keep. I also wanted to say that we're incredibly proud of you and of the tireless work that you do for us and for this community. And I wanted to say how proud we are that you are a member of this club.
Thank you. That means a lot, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it. And I see in the chat box some information has been put up about our town hall for next Tuesday. I really encourage you to tune in, especially because we have Joe Nagoose as a special guest, and I think you'd love to hear from him about what's going on at the federal level. But thank you so much for those kind words, David.
Sure, but one more thing, and that is that, as you know, after 26 years of hard work, Rotary and its partners are on the brink of eradicating polio. But we're not done, and a strong push is still needed to root it out once and for all. So in your name, today the Boulder Rotary Club is going to contribute 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right. Yes, thank you, Michael, and thank you, David, for responding. Now we come to the words in video format from our brewmeisters, the Browns.
Welcome to Boulder Rotary Club, the best place to be on a Friday afternoon. It's been a grind, but we all know better days are coming.
Thank you to Fred Hull for all you do for Boulder Rotary and for being our guest star today.
Hello, Rotarians and guests, and thank you for being here today. This is the first official week of summer. Here's my view of Stonehenge during the solstice.
Just a reminder that our Rotary Book Club meeting is July 13th, and the book is Factfulness, 10 Reasons Why You're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think. Darla will send out a Zoom prior to the meeting.
I look back over this Rotary year and the amazing programs that we have, and it's the responsibility of the program committee to keep them coming. They're meeting on July 9th at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., and you're not on the committee? Well, heck, not a problem. They'd love to hear from you. All Boulder Rotary members are welcome, or you can contact Cassidy Murphy, Gary Kahn, or Paul Jurdy.
I don't know if you missed it or not, but this past week, Nigeria was declared polio-free. We are this close.
Yes, Rotary, go. And the District 5450 WASH Symposium Committee would like to invite you to nominate speakers for their symposium to be held on October 3rd, 2020. The theme of this year's symposium is WASH, the blue thread that connects Rotary's areas of focus. Charlotte Rame and Arvis Layton are co-chairs, and they'd like to hear from you. Dr. Peter Ewing has been a Boulder Rotary Club member since September 1st of 1990. His sponsor was David Sabat, and he's a physician family medicine classification retired.
Peter was club president in 2008 and 2009 when the theme was Make Dreams Real.
Peter served this district as district governor from 2014-2015 when the theme was Light Up Rotary. Paul Harris Society, Diamond Fellow, Sustaining Member, District Governor's Discretionary Award, Rotary Foundation Major Donor, Bequest Society, Benefactor, Legacy Society.
Peter's Rotary accomplishments are too long to list, and we just want to thank him for his many, many years of service to our community and to our world.
Peter has served his club and Rotary International quite well. He has been an inspiration to Sally and I in our Rotary careers, and we want to take this opportunity to thank Peter. I'd like all of you to stand right now, and I'd like all of you to clap and salute Dr. Peter Ewing, Rotarian of Boulder Rotary Club. Damn, I'm gonna miss this guy.
Boy, it's sure been hot. Wouldn't that be a nice treat? Happy 4th of July, you all. We'll miss you next week.
And this meeting will officially end our Rotary year. Thank you, John Sullivan, President, and goodbye. Rotary connects the world. We'll be back on July 10th for the installation of officers for the Rotary year 2020-2021.
Everybody, say it with us now. Have a great weekend.
Great weekend. All right. Thank you so much, Daryl and Sally. Oh, man. Okay. Now, something a little more somber. Bill Anderson is going to give us an update on COVID-19. Mr. Anderson, take it away.
Hi, all. With me today, I have Dr. Valerie Lippitz and Dr. Mark Stern, both members of our club, as you all know. We're going to start with a few questions that have been prepared in advance, but I would encourage folks to please post at any point in the chat any questions that you have outstanding about what's going on with COVID right now. I'd like to start with Dr. Stern. And the first question is, Mark, is it safe for me to eat in restaurants and go to the movies again? In other words, can I go back to something resembling my normal life?
Like in most things in medicine, it depends. And there are a number of gradations of risk factors, both for individuals and for the community you live in. So if you have risk factors such as diabetes, obesity, heart disease, lung disease, greater than age 65, some sort of immunocompromised disease, you're taking more risk. So it's really up to the individual. And I'll get into what to look for when you decide to go out to eat, if you decide to go out to eat. There's also the societal perspective. If you take risk, you're also putting others at risk if you do come down with COVID. So you need to take that into account. But let's talk about the personal risk. Again, if you have any of those conditions, you need to take that into account when you're going out to dine or do anything with other people. So what it is, probably 4 things you should consider when you're thinking about going out to eat. One is the number of people that you're going to be eating with. Less people are better. Are these people known to you? Are they family members? Are they friends? Are they like-minded people, or are they just acquaintances? The less people and people that are like-minded, they take the same precautionary measures that you do. That makes it a lot safer than going out with somebody that's an acquaintance. So those are things you should take into account. Another is the place and space that you're going in. So the restaurants you're going in, are they doing the things that are required? Is there social distancing? Are the waiters and waitresses and other staff essentially basically wearing masks? Are the tables set up before you get there? Is there silverware on the tables? Probably better not to do that and set it up as you walk in. So those are some things to look for. The other thing is how long you're going to be there. The longer you're in a restaurant, the more chance of the longer you're in any closed space, the more chance you are to contracting any type of illness. They should be requiring face masks when you walk into a restaurant. Obviously, when you're eating or sitting down and you're socially distanced, you're going to take that mask off. Other things to kind of keep in mind is indoor versus outdoor, which is something that comes up. If you go down to Pearl Street now, everybody's kind of dining outdoors. Outdoors is a lot safer than being indoors. And then you can kind of get into really kind of crazy stuff. What kind of AC, air conditioning do they have? What kind of circulation do they have? I wouldn't go crazy with those things, but those are things that should be taken into consideration as well. Outdoor, again, is safer than indoor. So it's safe, but it's really a personal decision and what type of personal risk factors you have, and you need to take those things into account.
Thanks, Mark. Next question goes to Valerie, and I do see that some folks have started to post questions, and John and Lena and Gordon, we will get to those questions in just a few minutes, so thank you for asking them. Valerie, the next question is, how is Colorado faring relative to other states? And how about Boulder County in particular? And one additional question to tack on to that one, am I safer in the high country because there's lower population density?
Colorado actually has been doing reasonably well compared to other states. Again, it really depends on the locale you're talking about. Obviously, denser populated places like Denver have a tougher time than less populated places perhaps on the western slope. In Boulder County itself, we had a really good flattening of the curve, and now we're starting to see a little uptick on that. In Boulder, actually, we've continued to stay pretty low. Most of the new cases have been actually in people aged 20 to 30. And that may be a reflection of some of the activities that went on, you know, around having to go to protests, but also some of the celebrations for graduations and things that were not using the best social distancing. So at Boulder Community right now, you know, there have not been any ICU cases for quite some time, and no deaths for quite some time. The other thing that's really encouraging statewide is how well we're doing in treating people, even who end up in the ICU with COVID. We're seeing a lot more people recovering and a lot fewer people needing to be on ventilators, just due to some of the things that have been learned in that really short time. And it's just amazing how much has been learned in such a short time of how to take care of these people.
So just one, the last part of that, Valerie, was about, are we safer going up into the high country where a population is a little bit lower?
Sorry, I'm sorry I didn't answer that. Well, that, just like Mark said, depends. If you go up to a really popular hiking place and it's very crowded, no, it's not safer. But if you go to a place where you're pretty isolated, then yes, it would be. There's nothing about it being the high country per se, as more just less densely populated. I think a lot of the trouble we're having though is you think you're going somewhere where it's less densely populated, but everybody else had the same idea, and then you're on a trail with many people. It's obviously less safe than if you were hiking with your loved one, just the two of you.
Thanks, Valerie. Okay, so one more pre-prepared question, and then we've got some just came in from Jean as well. So Mark, are cases spiking nationally, or is testing capacity increasing, and that accounts for any appearance of a spike? We're certainly seeing lots of coverage about Texas and Florida and some other places where the numbers seem to be increasing. Is that an appearance of an increase, or is it really happening?
Well, unfortunately, we don't really have a baseline, but common sense tells you if you're going to do more testing, the numbers are going to go up. The problem is when we first got into this pandemic back in March, or earlier than that, the only testing that was taking place were patients. The only way you were able to get a test, specifically in Colorado and other places as well, was only if you were admitted to the hospital with the thought that you had COVID, or if you were a frontline provider that was taking care of patients with potentially having COVID or other medical conditions. So we don't really have a baseline, but common sense tells you if you do more testing, the numbers are going to go up. That's not the most important number. And the other thing that we see now is that younger people, due to the fact that asymptomatic patients or people are being tested, people with less symptoms are now being tested. That wasn't permitted before just because we didn't have the capacity to do it. So it's hard to kind of compare, but yes, the numbers are going up partly for the testing. The more important numbers are the hospitalizations. And there's obviously the hot spots that you just mentioned, Texas, Florida, Arizona, as well as Alabama, Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina. Those numbers are going up, and the hospitalizations are really going up. And that's the concerning part. And then the ICU beds are going up. In Houston, the ICU bed capacity is up to 97%. So they're going to be overwhelmed in a very short time. In Arizona, the numbers are up. ICU beds the capacity is 88%, and those numbers are going to be overwhelmed. Those beds are going to be overwhelmed in a very short period of time as well. Now that we're starting to test everybody across the country, we should be able to get a baseline and see if the percentage of COVID patients are going up, but we have nothing to compare it to in the past. So the important numbers are hospitalizations and ICU, and then the death rate. And folks, politicians are saying the death rate's going down. Other people are saying the death rate's going down. One thing to keep in mind, there's a lag rate. As patients get hospitalized, as patients get admitted to the ICU, which is very specific criteria, there's going to be a lag time of somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks. So the next time we have this conversation, all the politicians are saying that the death rate is going down or it's stabilized. I will bet a lot in the next 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to see the death rate go up. So don't let that fool you. I hope that answers the question there.
Thanks, Mark. It does. Next question is from Gordon. Gordon, would you go ahead and ask your question for Valerie to answer?
What do we know about whether someone who's already recovered from the virus can get it a second time? Hello? Did you hear me? Did you hear me?
Go ahead and unmute, Valerie. Unmute.
You're on mute or I'm on mute?
Not you, Gordon, Valerie.
Oh.
The usual thing I do to unmute is hit my space button, and it didn't work for some reason. I think it might have been because Gordon was still speaking. But anyway, unfortunately, our data on that aren't very good yet. There are cases that appear to be people who have gotten reinfected. There's some data, and how good it is yet isn't clear either, starting to come out that the antibody level may start to wane as soon as 2 months after infection. So, you know, right now there is definitely the possibility of getting it a second time. Again, you know, half this time we're flying by the seat of our pants because the data aren't very good, and we're still in that situation right now.
So probably safe to say no taking the mask off just yet, even if you've already had it.
Right. There was recently a case of a young woman in Colorado, I think she's from Lafayette, where she had COVID, tested positive. She had 2 negative tests for COVID over the next 2 months. And then the 3rd month, she still had symptoms and she tested positive again. Was that a recurrence? Was that disease never completely resolved? It's really unknown at this point. So the answer is what Valerie just said. It's very, very unclear. It's a weird disease that we're just starting to get a handle on at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. John Kotke, could you ask your question, please, for Mark?
Okay. Mark, you know, I've never really, or I have trouble considering myself being in a risk group, but I am over 65. In fact, I'm actually 71. And so I guess my question, and I probably, you know, could lose a few pounds, but other than that, I don't have any underlying conditions. I'm in good health. And so I guess my question is, why, just because I'm over 65, am I in a higher risk group? I mean, I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, so, you know, help me out.
Sure. Well, statistically right now, the number, when they look at it, the people that have more serious side effects or comorbidities due to COVID are patients that are older, whether it's over 65, 70. As you get older, the severity of the disease is more serious. A couple of things there. You said you had no risk factors. You have no medical conditions or comorbidities. I don't think those are the patients. If you're over 65, most patients over 65 have at least one comorbidity, whether it's hypertension or cardiac disease. So if you're really in good health, I think you're in good shape. So they're just kind of using that as a metric. We do that. We pick an age and we just say, you're over 65, that's it. But most patients over 65 have at least, they're on some medication, and that's part of it for a condition that they have. If you don't have any of those conditions, I don't think it's that concerning. Something else I was gonna say, there's the other piece of that is, so if you're in good health, I wouldn't be overly concerned with that. The other thing I was going to say is, as we do age, things don't work as well. We don't repair our body as well. Our immune system isn't as robust as it is when we're younger. So those things do play into it, but I think if you're a healthy 65-year-old with no medical conditions, you're not on any medications, I don't think you're really in that high-risk group, although we categorize you that just because we like to put categories in place.
Okay, well, that's helpful. That was one of the things I was wondering, if just because I'm older, my immune system may be a little slower. I mean, there's a lot of things that are a little slower in my body right now, but so yeah, I'll continue to you know, be safe. But that helped me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right, so I think we're running a bit short on time, but let's take one more question from Jean. And if you could direct that one to Valerie.
Valerie, are you there? Valerie,
Here.
or Michael, one of you. My question is it true that once you get COVID-19, you'll have lasting lung damage? Or is that just stuff out there? Fake news.
Yes, I think it really depends on the severity of the COVID illness you get. I mean, we've already talked about there's some people out there who don't even know they have it. They're very unlikely to have lung damage. The people who have really severe respiratory response to the virus, and especially anybody who had to be ventilated, could potentially have permanent damage. Again, you know, we don't have the data yet to know what permanent means. I mean, somebody may be debilitated for months and months, but they may get some repair. We haven't had people who've been recovered long enough to really have any studies around that. So it is a potential risk. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed that if you get COVID, you're going to have lung damage. You know, there are certainly people who've been sick enough that yes, their lungs are damaged and may be damaged forever. But it isn't the COVID itself. It's how bad the virus response, well, how bad the response of your body to the virus is would determine that, not the virus itself. So somebody who just has some fevers and feels crummy for a few days and then they're better, which there are people who have it that way, are not going to have lung damage. Somebody who's sick enough that their oxygen levels drop very low and they end up on a ventilator are likely going to have some permanent damage to their lung, but not necessarily.
So
again, go ahead.
So we have a great niece that is 3, just turned 3, and she had it. She had it very bad. In fact, got pneumonia afterwards. And they're also telling her to get her eyes tested. What does that mean? She's 3.
The eye testing may have had to do with how, her having to be on high levels of oxygen while she was being treated.
Oh.
So, and if somebody's going to recover lung damage, it's going to be a 3-year-old. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. So,
okay.
And
Thank you, Valerie.
She wasn't put on a ventilator or anything.
No.
I mean, the likelihood is she probably will not have any long-term effects from the disease. And it's what Valerie said, probably checking the eyes if she was on oxygen at home. That could cause damage to the eyes, particularly in the young. The ones that really have lung damage, serious lung damage, are the ones that are going to be put on ventilators. And they're on it for extended period of time. Most patients go on ventilators for 1 to 3 days after a surgical procedure or something of that nature, maybe a little longer. COVID patients with this disease are staying on ventilators for up to weeks. And we really don't know what the side effects of that's going to be. And what they're finding with these patients is they're getting fibrosis and damage to the lungs, possibly to the virus, but clearly to being on a ventilator for extended period of time as well.
Okay.
I want to thank all of you for participating. I don't mean to cut the questions short. I realize that there are additional questions, and my apologies to those that have asked questions and not had an opportunity to have them answered. But perhaps if Valerie or Mark sees those questions in the chats and wanted to just provide brief answers there, or if everyone wants to hang on until after we honor Peter, I think there might be an opportunity to ask a couple of those questions. I really appreciate everyone participating, especially Valerie and Mark. Thank you very much for your time. I know that as club members, there's a lot of questions hanging out there for many of us. And so we really appreciate your help in navigating this stuff. And folks will be back with another segment soon. So please send questions to me or to the RIB, and we will keep things moving. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. It's always a mixed blessing to have more questions than answers, but now I'm going to switch over to George Russell to introduce today's birthday boy. George.
Yeah, with aging, you do slow down a little, but the good thing, it doesn't shut us up. I'd like to introduce Peter Ewing. Has his birthday today. Happy birthday, Peter. You can come on and make your statement now.
Okay. All right. Am I on? I think I unmuted.
You unmuted.
Okay. So in 1960, at the age of 16, and unbeknownst to me, I was introduced to Rotary. I left on a year's exchange in Austria, not through Rotary, however. This experience changed me as a person in profound ways. Fast forward to 1989, and our daughter was selected by Boulder Rotary to interview at the District Exchange Committee. She was selected and spent her year in France. Later that year, I was proposed for membership in Boulder Rotary by David Sabat, and my 30-year adventure with this club began. Now it's coming to a close, and I would like to express my profound gratitude to this club for all that I have received over these years. It began with my desire to pay back, or maybe I should say forward, to the youth of Boulder for my life-changing experience. My major, and perhaps only at that time, focus in these early years was on youth exchange. As a club committee member, committee chair, and a member of the district youth exchange committee. Our club would routinely, at that time, send 10 to 12 candidates to the selection weekend, 6 to 7 outbound students each year, and we'd likely host between 4 and 6 inbound students. But something at that time induced me to attend a 3-Saturday district event, RLI, otherwise known as Rotary Leadership Institute, where I was introduced to the true breadth and depth of Rotary. And that's when my true journey began. I was asked to be club president at one point, but I couldn't accept because in a busy family medicine practice, there was a strong possibility that I might be called out of a meeting to deliver a baby. But fortunately, I was asked again, and again, just at the right time. I was 65 and I was ready to retire. During my year as president, our club won the Paul Harris Award for excellence as the best club in our district. This club's devotion to youth service, broad-based education, community service, and especially international service are what makes it so very, very special. Having experienced Norris's year as our district governor sent me on the road to apply for that position 9 years later. That experience was most special as I saw all that clubs in our district were doing within their communities and around the world. Our district conference in Keystone was truly special for my wife and I. We themed it Rotary in a Changing World. It was a thinly veiled discussion of global climate change before Rotary International made that topic part of their focus. And by the way, I just got an email from Rotary International. They have just made supporting the environment the 7th area of focus. We also had the opportunity to extend and expand the collaboration between Rotary and the Peace Corps. And finally, Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary was featured in a presentation of the Peaceful Schools program. I have to give a special thank you to everyone who put countless hours into planning and executing that weekend. You know who you are, and you really deserve that. Since I've enjoyed a time of more relaxed engagement at the club level and the district level, but still being involved in volunteer service to our community. I've spoken about what we have done while I was member of Boulder Rotary, but what have I received in return? Well, I mentioned RLI, went to PETS training twice, emerging district leadership at the zone level, district governor nominee and elect training at the zone, several international conventions, and especially fabulous, fabulous programs at our club level. And above all, training to become a better leader, a better speaker, and a more confident individual. But most importantly, the opportunity to break bread and share fellowship with such wonderful people over these 30 years. You all will remain in my heart forever. Thank you to Boulder Rotary for these past 30 years.
Very good, Peter.
You're welcome.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Where are you
Peter?
going?
The check's in the mail.
All right, I love it. Couple of things. I'm glad you weren't president on February 6, 1997, because that's the day you showed up at Boulder Community Hospital to help deliver my first child, my daughter Miranda. So thank you for that. You will also be pleased to learn that the board made an electronic decision this morning to have you as an honorary member of our club forever and ever. And so even though you'll be leaving us, you will still be in our club. And I
really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. This club is, in my opinion, no question at all, the best in the district, but one of the best clubs, one of the most innovative clubs in all of Rotary. E-Club 1.
It's okay.
You guys are really incredible.
And we also have a special something that I want to just, I can only display it today, and we can deliver it to you and MJ later. So bear with me while I do a low-tech sharing on Zoom.
On Zoom.
What is that?
It's Mark's John.
Hold on.
Yeah, we're holding.
Okay.
Oh my. Oh my.
Oh, that's lovely.
This is a framed photograph in the way, and of course my screen is reflecting in it, but it is a photograph of the Flatirons looking across Chautauqua Meadows that we got for you because we know you won't forget us. We want to make sure you have reminders of us always that you can put in your new home in Port Townsend. And this is signed by a number of club members, and there's still a few more people that want to sign it. And if you're one of those people, please let me know, and we will make arrangements for you to sign it. So, Peter and MJ, we love you, and we can't live without you, but somehow we're going to have to find a way. And thanks so much for being a part of our lives for so long and touching us in so many positive ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's just lovely. So thank you very much. We will miss everyone, but we'll be back.
All right.
Reappears.
I had to practice that, beforehand. So I think we've come to that special time when we adjourn the meeting. And this one's going to be the hardest one to adjourn.
Sullivan, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you for a second. Let's give it up.
Hey, I'm president.
Let's give it up.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Sullivan, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you all. It's I'm feeling a lot of stuff, and but I'm not going to get misty in the last meeting we have here. And it has been a pleasure to be your president for the last 361 days, I think. And I'm not going anywhere after June 30th, at least as far as our club is concerned. And so we'll be seeing you around. And 4th of July, Daryl and Sally pointed out that we're dark next Friday on the 3rd. So go to a socially distant barbecue or picnic. Have a great weekend this weekend. Have a great weekend next weekend. Meeting adjourned. And if you want to stick around, I don't want to presume upon Valerie or Mark's time, but if one or both are sticking around, we can keep this going for 5 minutes, and maybe some questions that people have can get answered.
Not a problem. Thanks.
Yeah, I can stay a bit.
Thank you both. I thought one of the excellent questions that was asked was from Merrill. I don't know if Merrill is still on, but if he is and wanted to ask his question about masks, I'd be curious what your responses are.
Thank you very much. I know, guy, either one of you want to go after this is fine with me. I know that earlier in the pandemic, the CDC did not advise people to wear masks. Regardless of your opinion about the wisdom of this statement, could you comment on the efficacy of wearing a mask for yourself and those around you?
I could comment, and then Valerie could jump in. You know, I just read a very short one. I always believe that wearing a mask will help protect you. Okay, how much is questionable. There was just a study out of Hong Kong University in which they did a study with hamsters. They didn't put masks on hamsters, but they kind of demonstrated if hamsters were wearing masks and you shot the virus in. Let me start from the beginning. They are beneficial. They're beneficial to the person wearing the mask, and they're beneficial to the person that if you have a virus and you're wearing a mask, will reduce the risk to that person on the receiving end. So there was a study that was just done in which they demonstrated, or in which it appeared that these hamsters were wearing masks. And when they were wearing masks, when the hamsters were wearing masks, there was a 16% infection rate. So you're reducing the infection rate of other people around you significantly in that case. So 84%, I'm doing the math right, is a reduction in this particular study. For you wearing that mask, so now they had the hamsters wearing the mask, and they were where you're wearing that mask, and they were blowing the virus in, there was a 33% infection rate, meaning there was a 67% reduction for you to wear that mask if you came into contact with somebody with the virus. So it benefited you as wearing the mask, and benefited others by you wearing the mask if you had the infection. When they didn't have the mask, and they did the same study where nobody was wearing the mask, there was a 66% infection rate. Okay, is that, if you have questions with that, I could try to clarify it. I just read this study. Bottom line is it protects you 67% if you're wearing the mask if somebody else has the infection. It protects others if you have the infection by about 84% in this particular study.
One doctor out of New York put it this way: it's like have a dinner with a lot of garlic in it, and then afterwards relate to your significant other with a mask and without a mask, and see if he or she perceives the garlic that you ate for dinner.
The other concerns with masks, which again, I just read something, they're talking about filters and those types of things. That's to protect you. And people are using furnace filters and vacuum filters. The thing you have to be concerned there with is there's some toxic materials in those, so you should not put those in. That becomes very dangerous, and people seem to just want to do that because putting that in just makes sense. It's a filter, but that could create a bigger problem for you or lung conditions that are unanticipated. So be cautious of what kind of mask you get.
So, you know, back at the beginning, the thing of the CDC not recommending wearing masks, I think there's some confusion around that. I think at first they were saying, don't wear surgical masks, N95 masks, because those were needed for the medical community to do their job, and there was a fear for shortages. So I don't think they necessarily thought that masks were not a good thing. They just didn't want people going out and scooping up all of the, the masks that needed to be saved for people working in the healthcare settings. Look what happened to toilet paper. But anyway, now, Mark's right. I mean, there's more and more data that probably the main benefit of wearing a mask is preventing you as a person who might be carrying the virus from giving it to someone else. And the risk to you as a person, if you have your mask on and the person who has COVID does not, you're at a higher risk than if they had a mask on and you did not, and a much higher risk than if both of you had masks on. So I think the goal would be to try to have everybody wear masks. There's all kinds of strange, weird stuff out, in the internet about the dangers of wearing masks, and other than the stuff that Mark talked about where you put poisons in your mask, you're not gonna have carbon dioxide poisoning, you're not gonna have trouble breathing. I mean, none of that is true. I mean, there's thousands and millions of surgeons and surgical techs and surgical nurses who are in masks all day long. I'm in a mask all day long when I'm at work, and there's no problem with it.
Thanks for that question. Hey, Mark, the Hong Kong study that you referred to, were those N95 masks? Were they cloth masks? What sort of masks were these hamsters wearing?
Well, they weren't. You kind of pictured hamsters wearing masks. It was really an outflow, so they were kind of blowing the virus into a cage, an isolated cage. So it basically kind of simulated that the hamsters were a mask. I'm not exactly sure, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay. I'm not sure.
Because I got in a bit of a dispute with my neighbor up in the mountains about that issue, because she runs an urgent care center, and she's like, yeah, the masks don't do anything. And she was making the comparison between the N95 mask and the cloth masks. And I was saying that the stuff that I had seen, because I saw a British study a while back that said that using a cloth mask at least improved your chances of not contracting something, even if it was not nearly as effective as the N95 mask. It's incremental benefit.
And that's correct. I mean, that is correct. And then they talk about the mask. If you can't see through it, I mean, there's kind of a quick thing. If you can't see through, what kind of material should you use? If you're using pillowcase sort of thing, pillowcase cotton to do it, high grade cotton, it's going to be more protective than something you could see through. So yes, it is protective, and they're finding it does protect you to a lesser degree, but it definitely protects others if you're infected.
Thank you both very much.